great to see you guys.
Likewise.
And
Likewise.
I'm appreciative of Stan's opening remarks. This is not going to be one of those shows where, oh, well, the church is just bashing stuff that we, another thing we like to do. And, the church is against everything. No, 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 no. It's not that. God is the creator of the greatest artistry, the artwork, the masterpieces
Say that.
that have been viewed. You look at landscape. In fact, I would go as far as to say there is no design that can be made by anybody whose mind is not already reflecting some kind of artwork that God Himself was already the original designer. Now, the way we use it, that's a whole nother thing, because people have good hearts and they may be ignorant of how it affects the skin or how it affects their lives, and could be putting it on themselves to remember a loved one that was lost, and their heart can be in the right place, and they think that they're doing a good thing. And I would never condemn anybody for having tattoo art on their body. But if we're going to begin anywhere, at least start with the motivation of the heart, and the expression of the art. At least needs to be starting from a good intention, a good place, a good motivation. And I think that that alone separates it from some of the more dark, evil, or bad intended, and reckless kind of behavior that's out there.
I love it. I love it. I'm glad you actually preface as well your statements by letting everyone know, what our intentions are, what our motives are. And I think also I just want to add to that by asking just a couple of questions just to kind of get it out of the way, just to clear the air. And we're going to have it on record. This is going to be archived from now until Jesus come. But I would like each of us to answer these questions. Simple for us, but nonetheless, I know someone needs to hear it, and that is, if you have tattoos, can you still make it to heaven?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right.
But
Seems like a
now,
simple question for us, but for others, who don't have the same, knowledge and experience in this walk that we have, they're not always certain. Hey, because we give off a lot of messages.
yeah.
So, I want to just make sure that that was clear.
Well, just remember something real quick. God is going to give us all new bodies. Everything we have here is temporary. It's this earthly, skin that we have, just bodily, but the form that God has placed us in. We're going to receive a whole new body, brand new.
Come on.
And I would dare say that I wouldn't be too far off base to say that when God makes all things new, it's not going to have any tattooing on the body or artwork on the body. It will be in its pure and perfect form and condition the way God intends it. Which, by the way, let me make this point too, that we are God's creation and our bodies are the temple of God. So we need to be very careful. You're talking about what to do with your body, on your body. Don't get too big on your britches. We need to reconcile. The Bible said we are not our own. So that's why this is a relevant topic that we're trying to see. Hey, okay, what does God have to say, if anything, concerning how we treat our bodies? Because it's not 100% ours alone.
I love it. So we're gonna come back and go deeper on that subject right there that you just brought up. But I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier. You actually answered my second question. So the first question for our viewers was, if you have tattoos, can you still make it to heaven? Emphatically, we all said yes, of course you can. It may that that might not have been known or might not have been clear to everyone in the world, but we want you to have clarity today that yes, you can. If you've gotten your whole body full of tattoos, you can still make it to heaven. We're not going to concern ourselves so much with your decisions in the past. My second follow-up question was, do you have to remove your tattoos before you come to God? If someone says, man, I believe I'm at a crossroads where I want to come to God, but I have all of these tattoos, and I've been led to believe in some churches or among some Christians that, you know, that's evil, that's the devil. You know, we get all, people get all sorts of impressions about tattoos from Christians, and so someone who might be at a crossroads, who's, or what they believe to be a crossroad, they want to come to God, but they're saying, I have all these tattoos, and my life forbidden from coming. So what say ye?
Absolutely not. You know, I know we're talking about tattoos particularly today, but there's a true life story that a pastor that happens to be Seventh-day Adventist shared with me as to how he even got to where he is. And the story is about a grandfather of his that was an alcoholic. And one day he stumbled into a tent meeting. This is many, many years ago, decades ago. But he stumbled into a tent meeting. He was drunk. The folks didn't turn him away. You know what I mean? And they ministered to him. He came back the next night a little less drunk and then a little less drunk until eventually this man was baptized. He was no longer drinking. He got baptized into the church. And shortly thereafter, he found out he was imminently ill to where he was upon the brink of death. So what he did was he shared with one of the women that ministered to him, listen, can you continue to go and minister to my children and make sure that they continue going to church and serving the Lord? They did so. And one of those children ended up being his mother, right? And so you think about how upon his deathbed, he asked that this take place, and then in turn, with him having that request and that prayer, and his mother being one of those children, and eventually him being born, and so then he was allowed to matriculate through school and into seminary, and so now he becomes a pastor. But this all has its birth in the fact that no one in the church turned him away for being an alcoholic. The same way that we today should not turn someone away because they may not meet our eye test. A lot of times we have the right theology, but we have the wrong spirit, right? And so even, you know, folks will turn to different texts within the Bible. I have them myself. You know, we'll try to manipulate what the Bible is actually saying to condemn someone's actions, when in fact they may not necessarily be what it is that God himself is saying.
Yeah. Love it. So that answer, any for viewers who are watching, do you have to remove tattoos before you come to God? Absolutely not. We're not. Just come. We'll talk about the other stuff later. Now, so I think we've established clearly, and this has been our aim, to establish clearly, anyone who's made decisions to get tattoos, you can go to heaven just like someone who doesn't have any tattoos. You can come to church just like anyone else can come to church.
Amen.
What we're going to proceed to do moving forward now is we want to share with you, what does God think about his masterpiece, and whether or not by getting tattoos, or shall I say, I described it as, I worded it as people making a decision to implement human renovations to their body, making changes by adding graphics, by adding graphics. Whether that's something that God, if you were to ask him, hey, you know, Lord, do you think I should do this? Would you like it if I got this image on my back? What would he say? So now we're going to proceed with, you know, what does the God of the universe think about this? Pastor Trey, it looks like you had something before I jumped in.
Yeah, my mind's just stirring and stirring. You know, we have to be very careful, again, as it pertains to our bodies. As you notice, we grow, we mature, our skin also ages. There's always a developing process, a growing process. We don't ever just stay or look exactly the same. Having said that, one of the number one reasons that I've heard when I did a little research about tattoos was that people want to remove the tattoos that they've put on their body is because they aged out of it. There's a certain time in your life when you're a teenager, when you have certain desires and things certain things are cool, and if you could put it all into a piece of art and put it somewhere on your body to reflect what you're going through in your life, it would look one way. But in your 20s, you ask the same question: what kind of artwork would you choose? That would look most likely different than what you chose in your teenage years. And every generation is a little bit different and different. What I'm saying, once you get older, you look back at the time in your life, and the particular picture that was so meaningful at that time does not necessarily fit where you are in your life in the future. And so, statistics, and I would challenge everyone out there to look into this, but I've read actually that between 65 to 75% of everyone that gets tattoos actually at some point in time regrets the particular tattoo that they've gotten and would like to have it removed. That's why it should not be permanent, because you should never lock any particular phase or feeling you're going through in your life at a certain moment, and then make that permanent to always be etched on your skin for the rest of your life.
So having said that, I would question, what do we say then to our Polynesian brothers and sisters who are firm believers in Christ Jesus, right? But these tattoos are a part of their cultural heritage. What do we say to them?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of cultural heritage that we all have from all the cultures and backgrounds of where we're from. Don't get us started about our roots in Africa. Now, if you want to go back to the beginning of why certain type of behavior activities were done, you got to go back to the origin of the marking of one's body from the very beginning, and what that meant and why it was done. And I think that's very important as well. Everything we're doing is trace that, but go back to the origin of it, because that does mean something. And if it doesn't mean something different in different cultures, okay, fine. But in the Bible, people want to go back into their own culture, but they don't want to go back into the history and the culture of the Bible. We're like, no, just stop where my folks started doing it. Because we pimped it out, we turned it out, it was looking cool. Okay, fine. Guess what? They weren't the first ones to ever do it. Okay, so you got to go back further than that. And if you look at Leviticus chapter 19, God spoke to it because, in general, once again, and this can be argued, but in general, the people of the world who did not believe in God, who did not worship God or pray to him or follow his precepts and his rules, they lived a certain way that was way different than the people of God who did follow God's word and lived by his precepts and were worshipers of God. It was a different lifestyle, and it was also different how they treated their bodies. It was different what they ate. And so going back to the bodies, you're talking about jewelry and you're talking about tattoos. God's people were known more for the purity and the plainness as it pertains to both poking holes into their bodies as well as painting their bodies. In Leviticus chapter 19, I believe it's verse 28, but even if you look at 27, not rounding the corners of your heads, neither shall ye mar the corners of your beard. But notice something, if you keep going, it says, yes, or ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord. And that can be translated different words, any marks or tattoos. I am the Lord. So number one, this was the culture and the tradition, literally, of those who were godless, to abuse, and they didn't just put the marks on there; they put it on there for the dead people. And they did all kinds of other things as well to their bodies, that was not glorifying God, nor was it preserving the beauty, the purity, and the plainness, that the way God made it, so that the natural beauty could shine. But it was done in a way to take away from the natural use and to become unnatural in its use. That's very important. When God gives you something, there's a natural use for it, but then we can turn anything out and pervert it where it becomes used in an unnatural way, in a way not intended by God.
So if I'm a non-believer, right, and you present particularly verse 28 to me, but then I examine 27, which precedes it, should that imply that we shouldn't get haircuts and we shouldn't do anything to our beards even right now to today? This is a valid question that one would ask.
But again, what is the motivation? What is the intent? Is it to change or to alter the natural to become something that is fully taken away from what God has ordained? I don't think that that's what this is saying. There was a way of doing one's hair that also could represent gods that you believed in and or worshipped. Just like when they had the ladies would put gold, weaves of gold into the braids, and I have the sisters be like, "Oh, Pastor was just saying we can't wear braids," and they said, "No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about to use it with gold in the braids so you can whip your hair around to show everybody how rich you are because you got more gold strands than everybody else." That's what it's talking about. This is talking about to edge and to style your hair in a way to mimic or reflect or look like either a god or some kind of something that was not representative of the God whom we serve and follow. So again, it's kind of like today there are fads out there, and every fad, by the way, came from somewhere. And fashion trends. So be careful, and everybody shouldn't just jump on every bandwagon, every trend blindly. And you haven't done your research, and come to find out, this was certain witchcraft dude that cut his hair a certain way, and you didn't know you cut your hair the exact same way, and that was there. And it's the purpose to let everyone know you worship the devil, and you walking around, oh yeah, I'm looking fresh, and everybody else is looking at you who knows what it's about. Say, dude, do you know what you're doing? So that's my understanding of the context of how this is written. If you know, remember, context is very important.
Right.
God would not just come out the blue with something that is keeping you neat, orderly, and nice looking, and throw that in the midst of the same context of someone who's cutting their flesh for dead.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I absolutely appreciate what you just shared. I asked that question because oftentimes in pulpits, you don't hear it explained in detail like you just did. And I'm sure that both believers and non-believers would really enjoy what it is that you just presented, the light that you just shared today. So yeah, that's what that was for. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to summarize. So allow me, if you will, to summarize what we've learned. So we already established one, that if you have tattoos, listen, you can still go to heaven, you can still come to church. So we want to make that clear. And I want to keep emphasizing that in case someone joins the broadcast late. That's not what we're saying. But what we are focusing on at this point is, what are God's sentiments? How does he feel about it? What would he like to see? Now, what God did not do was see enough of this particular issue that he would make a law behind it, a commandment behind it. So if you're wondering, is God displeased with tattoos? We we can establish. I believe that we'll be able to show you that, as Pastor Trey has already begun, that God would simply not rather, he would rather you not do it. Now, was it enough for him to make it a law and put punishment behind it? The answer is no. Otherwise, it would be a commandment. But let's focus on what it is that makes God pleased with something, or something that he's displeased with. Now, we've just talked about how in Leviticus, Pastor Trey just pointed out that he clearly says, don't do it. So what are the reasons why he would be displeased? Well, I can name at least three. I can think of at least three. One, the Leviticus is showing that there was symbolism behind it, as Pastor Trey intimated. Symbolism behind it. And if the symbolism, the history and the symbolism is wrong, or it's doing something else that's not good, then God will speak to his people, those who follow him, and say, hey, you know what? Let's stay away from that. There's some symbolism in that. Another reason is health. There are health reasons why getting tattoos is not a good thing. Right. Pastor Dre and I were talking about this a little bit earlier this week. He may be joining us a little bit later, but he went into detail talking about how the liver is just having a hard time dealing with this ink, because it can't be processed. The ink used in tattoos is made up from molecules that the liver cannot break down and reuse. And it seems from studies that it has a hard time of disposing of it as well.
Yeah.
So it can't reuse them, because there are many molecules that the liver can break it. If they're toxic in nature to the body, the liver does a great job of breaking those molecules up and restructuring those elements to something that's good. That's its job. The liver's job is to clean you out. But if it can't do that, then what does it do with it? Well, it can dispose of it and send it out your system. But what if it has a hard time doing that? Well, then it remains in your body. If it remains in your body and it's not of any good use, then it's likely doing something detrimental. And you may not see that until over time. So we've got the fact that there's symbolism behind tattoos. We've got the fact that it's unhealthy for your body. That's science. Whether you're a believer or not, anyone can understand that. If it's unhealthy for your body, for the longevity, for the quality of health, quality of life, it's not a good thing. And then there's at least one more thing that I can think of, and then I'm gonna let you guys jump in, and let's continue to expound. The other one is, I just think God he's not happy that you think you can do better with his work. He created you perfect already. And now you're going to come behind him and say, I can do better than you guys. Let me go ahead and add this graphic on here. And he's like, he's not going to send you to hell over it. But I mean, we're so we're not, today's discussion isn't about that, but we're talking about, what will God like? Let me let you guys jump.
Let me touch on the health piece, but then also let me touch on that health piece, because, anything can become a God. We can actually, now I know this is most likely not the majority of people who get tattoos, but there are some people who could put their desire over God's will for them so much, to the point that it can become a stumbling block that can cause them to lose their soul salvation over something that is anything earthly that important, that we would just block off any counsel from the word of God. If so, you already know that that's standing between them and getting closer to God. And if God says remove it, now there are some tattoos that are so bad the artwork itself can become a doorway for demonic activity, and literally they can't be delivered from that unless it's removed. Right. And so again, doing more research about it, understanding where it came from, just because it's cool art, people unknowingly can be welcoming attacks in their life, talking about spiritual attacks, and bring complications in their life, and then they're wondering why they're getting blocked every time they try to pray. Something's blocking them, or every time they try to read the Bible, they get sleepy, And whenever they try and do anything for God, they get bored or lazy, and come to find out that there was a artwork that someone else who was godless, who didn't want nothing to do with God, was inspired and put that on their arm, and that it's affecting the other person who's actually trying to live for God. But back to the health part you said was so very important. What if the person who's actually putting the marks on you and the tattoos on you is not using the proper equipment? What if they're not sanitizing things properly? That's an issue. But just look at it from the surface. How is it done? You literally are scratching, you're indenting, you are going over a certain spot over and over and over. It's marring. That's why it's a mark, right? You are damaging the skin tissue in a way to make the art look right. Am I right about that, or am I going too far with that?
No, that's on point.
Okay, so I'm seeing this as a damaging of the skin, and of course, when it reheals and everything looks hopefully as nice as you intended to. But there is a damaging of the skin that takes place in that. 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 16, 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 17. Both of these make similar comments, but 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 17 is very powerful, because it's saying, if any man defiles the temple of God, him shall God destroy. Now, what that means to me is, don't sleep on what you do with your body. It says, for the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. Now, understand, with the understanding that your body is the temple of God, and it's actually supposed to be used for a holy use. So is what you're doing to your body, can you categorize that as a holy activity that's matching the holy body that is supposed to be what God gave you?
I like that. It makes me think about, in that respect, in terms of, what 1 Corinthians 3:17 described, how in Matthew 25 you have the parable of the of this man that goes off into a far country, but he gives to each a number of talents. And so, our bodies are those talents that we're supposed to invest in, right? But as we invest, is it something positive or is it something in the negative? What does the question the Christian must ask is, what does the putting on of the tattoo do to truly glorify God? I don't
Right.
think that you necessarily need to tattoo a cross upon your physical body to glorify God so much as you do allowing the sacrifice upon that cross to illuminate and move in your life and how you treat
Yes.
people and how you love on people. I think
Yes.
there's a difference, a stark difference between the two. And then also what I like to add is that, with tattoos, fortunately and unfortunately in my life, I've been exposed to things where even now, at this stage where I am now, when I go out in public and I look at people with tattoos, I can identify certain tattoos, what their meanings are, what they mean to me as an African American, right? So there are certain tattoos that let me know this person means me harm, because I am not a person to their liking, right? And so this same individual would call themselves a God-fearing American, right? But in truth, we all know, because we all read from the same Bible, that God is not only the God of the Jews, but he's also the God of the Gentile, right? Whatever side of that you're on, the bottom line is that sacrifice on said cross was for everyone, right?
Amen.
Was meant for everyone, right? So
Yes.
you know, in looking at that, then I would caution that person or individuals who think like that to really question, you know, the validity of them serving God and
Hmm.
who it is that they're really serving, you know, by placing that type of tattoo upon themselves.
Right. Now, let
Right.
me ask you two gentlemen a question.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times people say, well, show us in the Bible where God directly says it's wrong or don't do it. And I think that we have done that actually in
Hmm.
this case.
Hmm.
But I want to flip the whole question around and just say, can you show me in the Bible where the people of God did such a thing as a practice and it was in a way to glorify God or to represent holiness?
Nope.
No,
Nowhere.
I can't.
Mm-mm.
Because yeah, I mean, you won't find it. What you will find is on several occasions when Elijah on Mount Carmel, when all of the false prophets were jumping around and they began to cut themselves,
Hmm.
you know, but they were not the believers of God,
Hmm.
and they were doing it more in a frantic fashion as well. It definitely was not the spirit of God. You notice also the demoniac, that he was known for being chained and bound. And also, one of the identifying marks of his insanity was him cutting himself.
Hmm.
Now, we notice even now, those that have emotional instabilities and people even have suicidal tendencies, what are they drawn to doing when they begin to feel so down about themselves? One of the first things they begin to start doing is they're starting to feel like they hate themselves and would even cut themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I asked this question also to the panel that's currently here and to the audience at large, actually. Um, does this also apply to um, folks that are in their particular sororities and fraternities,
Woo!
right? That
Uh-oh.
have these brands.
Mm. Mm.
Sorry.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah.
Kim.
That's
Woo.
yeah. You know that to answer that question is to carry the conversation to an area where we then need to cover brandings as well
Yep.
as piercings and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Let's come back to that one. Not no, I'm not saying we may have time to do that one
I
today.
got you.
Let me cover tattoos specifically because there was something that you said, Pastor Trey, that definitely triggered me a thought, and that is, up to this point, everything that we've talked about has been uh, aimed at trying to persuade you in the future not to make a decision to get any more tattoos. Because if we can show you that God does not like it for reasons either of the symbolism, and we're not talking about a specific symbol, but the idea that you place a graphic, whatever that is,
Hmm.
that symbolizes something that is not of a godly nature. He's not pleased with. And I know some of you probably thinking of some exceptions. Well, what if I got a graphic of Jesus himself, his
Right.
face, or the cross, or something? Would
Hmm.
that be satisfactory? Okay, I'll come back to that one in a moment. Right
Yeah.
now,
Or your deceased relative whom you love.
it's relative. Right. So symbolism is the reason why he doesn't like it, and is a reason why we shouldn't get it. But you mentioned something that really stood out when you talked about how you could have something on you that provides a portal
Hmm.
for demonic activity,
Hmm.
or it is inhibiting your prayer life, your walk with God, some way, somehow, something that you have on you, printed on you, is getting in the way. And this actually moves us into the conversation of why it might be a good idea to remove some tattoos. Because up to this point, we haven't talked about whether you needed to get it, because we already
Hmm.
said you can make it to heaven still if you're covered in tats. You're gonna get a new body, so you're not gonna actually take it with you to heaven. You're gonna have a brand new blemish free body. Is beautiful, a new masterpiece. We're not going to be adding to it. but you could at least be assured that you can make it to heaven with what you currently have. But now we're going to talk about some things that could be cause, could be reason for you to go and remove it sooner rather than later. That one about providing blocks is so critical. I just want to share this with you real quick. Discussing the supernatural, all things supernatural, demons and fallen angels and satanic practices, whether it's a Ouija board or whether it's Charlie Charlie or Bloody Mary, these types of things, as I teach individuals, you can have a situation where you either have something in your possession, in your home, and it can be the very cause of demonic activity in your house. The same can be true with something that is printed on your body. You could have something on your body that is symbolic of, is a dedication to little d, that's our name for the devil, and because of that, you are being blocked. You've changed your heart. You are now on God's team, but you're finding yourself not getting, your prayer, more prayers than not are getting answered, are not getting answered, and you're struggling. The focus Pastor Trey talked about, all of that's there. It might be because something is printed on your body, and that's cause for having it removed, other than the health issues. Come on, Jim.
I can't speak to the prayers being answered or not being answered, but what I can say is that my mother-in-law, may she rest in peace, oftentimes what I realize is that we as African Americans, we try to reconnect with the motherland, with our heritage, across the Atlantic where we come from. And so oftentimes out of a quest to reconnect, we'll buy art, we'll buy different sculptures and things of that nature, and we'll bring them into our home without as Pastor Trey said, really doing that homework and investigating, what the origins of that piece really are. I said all that to segue into the fact that my mother-in-law, the guy she was dating at the time, he brought back these necklaces with these symbols on the end. And so he had one for himself and one for her. Man, all of a sudden, the house just seemed to be in chaos. And her health did really begin to accelerate in terms of a decline. And so, there was a conversation being had between herself, myself, and my wife and whatnot, what have you. And then my wife said, you need to look at that symbol. I think you need to get that out of your house. And it was remarkable because I remember being there and looking at my mother-in-law, and she looked at that thing and she said, yeah, and turned to him and said, you need to get rid of yours as well. Wow. Right? These things are true. It was true for her, just like it's true for us. And so, oftentimes, we mean well, we had good intentions at wanting to reconnect with Mother Africa, whatever country within the continent that you happen to be from. Most of us are from a multitude of them. That's all fine and dandy. But, Pastor Trey hit that on the head when he said, you really need to do that homework and first understand the origins of a thing.
Yeah. The devil can actually have a legal right to take over not only your home, but it's more than that, even your head. You're referring to your mind and your heart in terms of beliefs and feelings, and can have a legal access to block so long as certain items are in the house, and if it's on your body especially. And remember, you are trusting another human being who most of the time you don't know what their lifestyle is, and you don't know what their relationship is with God or not. And if they are a spiritualist and involved in all kinds of demonic activity, everything they touch and everything they do is it's not just permanent ink that's being put on the person that they're touching, but whatever spirit inspired them that is connected to it is also now connecting to that person whom they're placing it upon. Because remember, even something beautiful, that's inspired by God. Um, and whenever you look at it, what happens? You are, when you see that artwork, you're inspired and you praise God. So now you know what the converse or the opposite can do when it's not from God. And you have to admit, let's be real about it.
Mhm.
Most tattoo artwork um, is not intentionally trying to praise God, but there's a darker side that's more dominant in what most of the art is about.
So would it, in your opinion, Stan and Pastor Trey, would you say, would it be going too far to say that in essence, whether it's a physical piece or the artwork itself on the body, that in essence it could be measured as the equivalent to as to bowing before little d versus bowing before God?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again,
Amen.
I just want to share,
Yeah.
I'll let you jump in, Pastor Trey, that, as a part of my studies, the supernatural is just one of my areas. Halloween season is coming up, and I typically always take a little extra time to talk about Halloween, its history, and everything that's
Good.
satanic that surrounds it. But one of the things I learned a long time ago was that, again, with regard to objects, Pastor Trey mentioned this, and it is absolutely true from my own studies, and that is that there is a legal right, if you will, that little d has to come and harass you, at least
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
when you have something, when rules are broken. And those rules can be broken if you bring something into your home that belongs to him.
Mm-hmm.
And belonging can be established by either a ceremony, a ritual that's performed on an object, like a trinket, like some doll, it could even be the Bible, as it turns out, the actual book. There was a case where a satanic ritual had been performed on the Bible, and it was given as a gift to someone. And as a result, this person was having supernatural encounters and couldn't stop it. And then an individual who was in the know, Roger Marneau, actually, some of you listening may be familiar with that name. He asked the person questions about gifts that they had been recently given from people who were questionable in character. And they said, yes, well, I got a Bible from someone, the Holy Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, the Holy Bible was given to them from someone of questionable character. And he instructed them to remove it from their home. And when they removed it from their home, all of the demonic activity stopped.
Wow.
But what we learned from that is that belonging can be established in a number of ways with objects as well as impressions, scars, or even from ink. And been dedicated to little d, to the devil, that he has permission to come in and do things in your home and prevent.
Wow.
So now, to your question, can an object or printing be used or become an inhibitor in someone's life because it has some sort of connection to the devil? The answer is emphatically yes.
But what you just explained is that ignorance is not even an excuse.
It's not an
Right.
excuse. Well, it doesn't nullify the consequence and the effect. So it's not so much that you again, it could be a situation where someone who has something that belongs to little d, or has something imprinted on him or her, like a pentagram on their back, which is satanic symboling, and when they change their life, they become gods, they never have a chance to remove it. They'll still make it to heaven, even though they never got it removed. But that's not to say that their life,
that's right,
either the point that they died or up until the point that Jesus returned, was not filled with otherwise unnecessary harassment and stumbling things that were getting in the way. That could still
I'm glad you said
Amen.
that because today if you just turn on your television or look or just examine on whatever music platform that you subscribe to, you'll see many artists today. The fad is to place this pentagram, on the
Mm.
forehead,
Oh,
somewhere on the
yeah.
body, and it's almost as though these folks think it's a game. Some of them might be serious about it, but some of them think, oh, it's just art. It doesn't really do
Fun and
anything.
games.
And they think it's a game. And, as you just alluded to, we're not
Let me also jump in and say that it's not just affecting the individual alone who's wearing it.
right,
Most people are in relationships.
right.
Okay. In a relationship, you all are both supposed to be one, so entwined and so together that actually each other's bodies you look over, you look after, you protect, and you make sure is okay and are impacted and infected by the health and appearance of each other's bodies,
Hmm.
right? Not even to mention also that when the children come into the world and they look to their mother and their father, they look to find out what normal is, what God's way is. And if they notice something that is a permanent part of your body, then they're growing up with the understanding, expectation, and even desire to do the same without even understanding what it's really all about. So it doesn't just impact you.
That's true.
Love it.
But
Finish your thought and give your final
yeah,
statement. We're already at the top of the hour. We need to wrap up, but go
yeah,
ahead,
because
finish.
I noticed he said, that the child is looking to the parents to see what God's way is. That's true in a Christian relationship or one that's attempting to be in a Christian relationship. But as I was alluding to with the artists, many of which do have children, that may or may not necessarily be true for them.
Right.
Also, it's the power of influence based upon the platform that they have in influencing not just thousands but millions of people who subscribe to their music or whatever
Yes.
it is that they do.
Very good point. Not to mention, you don't ever see old people um, showing off their tats because it looks like a hot mess after a while.
Hmm.
And it just goes to show you that it was not made to age out with us.
Hmm.
And then also people you can lose their jobs and employment in certain jobs. You can't even be hired
Hmm.
with certain visible tattoos in certain areas of your body. So even the world has their own standards. But beyond that, God does too. And my final statement is to glorify God in all that you do, recognizing that your body is holy and God's property. This was not the custom of God's people.
Hmm.
Neither should it be the same today.
Love it, love it, love it. I just want to go through and just kind of summarize what we've gone over today. We've talked about, again, I want to reemphasize, reiterate, to emphasize the fact that if you have tattoos, you can come to church, you can make it to heaven. We're not concerned so much about decisions that you've made in the past, but rather we wanted to focus on helping an individual to have clarity on what God's sentiments are about the idea of marking up your body, whether that's with piercings, which we didn't have a chance to go into, or brandings from being a part of a sorority or fraternity, as well as tattoos. But what are his thoughts about the markings? And so I think we've sufficiently articulated and shown with scripture that, yeah, God, he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. And there are reasons why he doesn't like it. He has, not that he has to give reasons, but there are reasons why he doesn't like it. One is the symbolism, the history behind them. We have health reasons from a purely humane and scientific basis. To have ink in your body, the permanent ink in your body is unhealthy, and your liver doesn't know what to do with it. It can't dispose of it. It's not good. The other thing is that, it's kind of like a slap in the face to God, because you're telling him that, you can do better with the
Mm.
masterpiece than he can. What he did wasn't good enough, so you're gonna add some more artwork to it. And so he's like,
Mhm.
really? Oh my goodness. But then we went on to talk about how there are reasons for removing them. Health reasons would be one as well. but you could be experiencing some blocks. You could be experiencing some satanic activity, interactions, because of what you have imprinted on your body, thereby justifying, providing just cause for removing them. So that's something to just think about. We certainly solicit your thoughts, your input, any other questions. We invite you to post them in the thread today, and we hope that it's been fruitful, that there's been some value to today's conversation on tattoos. Whether you have them or not, we look forward to seeing you in heaven.
Yes.
I had to say bye-bye to them, but don't worry,
Right.
you're gonna be pleased with the new body that you get in the new.
That's right.
Yeah.
Love you, TRP.
Come on. Yes, we do. So we're gonna shift, and it's good to see you, Pastor Trey. Looking forward to our next occasion. And
all right, Stan, Terrence.
All right,
we'll
blessings,
see
brother.
you.